Here is an interesting math problem. If x times sine of pi over x is equal to just the definite integral of the function f of t dt from 0 to x squared, what is f of 4? Well, let's try to evaluate this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first use the fundamental theorem of calculus, which basically states that if you have a definite function when you evaluate from s to x of f of t dt, then you just get the function f of x itself. This is the primary form of the fundamental theorem of calculus. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the derivative of x sine pi of x, and I'm also going to make this equal to the derivative of dx, the derivative with respect to x of the integral from 0 to x squared of f of t dt. Okay, well, this thing right here, we are just going to apply the product rule. So what this is going to equal to is going to be, well, the derivative of x is just going to be 1, so it's going to be 1 times sine of pi of x plus x, because now we're going to take the derivative of the other function, and the derivative of sine is just cosine pi of x times the function inside of it, which is just x pi or pi of x. And when we take the derivative of this thing, when we take the derivative of the small thing right here, we're just going to get pi. So this is just going to be equal to pi times pi is equal to dx. Again, we're taking the derivative with respect to x of the definite integral of f of t. Now I'm just gonna simplify this a little bit. Okay. And now here I'm gonna write this out, f of t dt, and I'm going to apply the fundamental theorem of calculus here. And what this is gonna give me is that this part right here specifically, I'm gonna write it in red, is just going to be, well, dx, or the derivative with respect to x of, it's going to be the antiderivative of this thing, f, capital F, evaluated at x squared, minus capital F evaluated at 0. Now what I want you to notice that this thing right here is just going to be a constant, because it could be anything. It could be a continuous function. And so what this thing is going to be equal to is going to be a constant. And if you remember from Calc 1, the derivative of a constant is just equal to 0. This thing equals 0. And what we are left with is just going to be, well, the product rule. So we are going to be left with dx over this thing. That's just going to be f squared times the function inside of it, 2x. So this whole thing is just really equal to f squared times 2x, which is equal to well, sine pi of x, sine pi of x, excuse me, my English is not working clearly. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out the 2x, and what I'm going to do is now I'm going to say that f of x squared is equal to 1 over 2x equals sine of pi x plus pi of x squared to, cosine pi x times cosine of pi x. Okay, great. We have this function right here. So now what I'm going to do, it's okay, well, I want to evaluate this thing of f is equal to 4. Well, I have f of x squared. Now, what I could do is two things. I can make a substitution. And so the substitution that I'm going to make is, okay, I want to really simplify this in terms of u, f of u. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say we're going to let, by the way, we're going to let u equals x squared. This is the first way we could do this, by the way, we could tackle this. And what this allows me to do is just to have a simpler function, f of u. And now what I want you to notice is that now this thing, the square root of u is equal to x, plus or minus, but in this case we really want to deal with a positive function. So I'm just going to, because this thing is it's a plus or minus, so this thing is going to be, this thing is odd, so it shouldn't really matter. This thing is even, so it doesn't really matter. This thing should matter, but just watch what happens. Plus or minus, but we don't care about the negative, we only care about the positive. And what we could do now is we could substitute f of u and we're going to say that for every x it's just going to be a square root of u, so boom, 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 boom. Times sine of the square root of u times pi plus the square root of u times pi times cosine square root of u pi. And now we could actually directly substitute 4 into it. So now what this allows us to do is that now when f is evaluated at 4, we are going to get 2 times the square root of 4 over 1, over 1, times sine times the square root of 4, again, pi, plus, again, the square root of 4, pi, cosine square root of 4, pi, and this thing is just going to be equal to, let me scroll down, this thing is just equal to 4, this is going to be 2 times 2 over 1, this thing is just going to be equal to 2 pi, and sine of 2 pi is just 0, plus 2 pi here, because it's just for simplifying it, cosine of 2 pi, this thing just equals 1, and now we have 1 over 4, now let me write it here more neatly, f of 4 is equal to 1 over 4, and then we are going to say that this is just equal to times 2 pi, and this is just equal to, therefore, f of 4 is just equal to pi over 2. Now, a more or less analytical way of doing it is that we could say that f of, and this is the second way, by the way, the second way is that when you have f of 4 is equal to f of x squared, we could say that these things inside the functions have to be equal, and so we're going to say that f of 4 is just equal to f of 2 squared, which is just equal to x of x squared. So then therefore x has to be equal to 2 because we want it in terms of 2. And what happens when we substitute it back in? Well, so f of x is just equal to 2x over 1. Again, we're going to redo the substitution, so we're going to say that it's going to be 2 times. So, we already know what it's this thing right here, so let me just move it down. Actually, we don't need to move it down. We just know it's going to be 2 times 2, because remember, we're substituting 2 this time instead of 4 times this. So we write it more neatly. Now we're going to say that this is going to be sine of 2 pi plus 2 pi cosine of 2 pi, and boom, we're going to get that this is just equal to 1 over 4, and again, this becomes 0, this becomes 1, and we're left with 0 plus 2 pi, and that's just the same thing as 1/4 times 2 pi, which is just equal to pi over 2. So therefore, so let me do it, therefore, f of 4 is just equal to pi over 2.